Today I'm going to tell you about the college football playoff rankings, where Oklahoma should be and what teams shouldn't be in the ranking anymore, as well as why Tom Herman should probably be fired. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Considering the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. So it's OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today we're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings. And we're also going to get into Tom Herman and why it is time for Texas to let that man go do something else. Like, I don't know, coach Italian League football. Serie B, for those of you that want to be funny. So let's start with the college football playoff, in that Alabama is the unquestioned number one team in the sport after they blanked LSU 29-0. Yes, Tua threw a pick, but you also got to see what I've been telling everybody about this Alabama team, which is that somehow, like Dre, y'all forgot about the defense, which it turns out is still an Alabama defense. It's still really, really good. And now they have a Big 12 offense to go along with it. It's really hard to think about anybody beating that team outside of Clemson. And I understand there's a lot of folks, Joel Klatt included, who think that Oklahoma can get into a basketball game with Alabama. But have you seen the defense? And yes, 2013 Sugar Bowl game notwithstanding, that ain't A.J. McCarron at quarterback. That's Tua Tagovailoa. And his passer efficiency rating is 215.2, which is awesome. And he's going to win the Heisman because Alabama's that good, not necessarily because he's the best quarterback. We know that Kyler Murray's passer efficiency rating is 216.6, even after throwing 2 picks in 1 football game. At number 2, you got Clemson, who put Louisville into a neck brace. I can't tell if that's road rash or bad sunburn. Point is, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, that entire defense, they look like a juggernaut as well. It seems like Alabama and Clemson are on a collision course for each other, unless one of these other teams in the ranking can really shake things up in the semifinal, and anything is possible. And at number 3, I don't think it's going to be Notre Dame this week. I think it's going to be Michigan. I think that they're going to leapfrog Notre Dame, because not only did Michigan whoop Penn State like they stole something 42-7, but Penn State was a ranked team that got a lot of respect from the College Football Playoff Committee with a number 14 ranking. And all khakis you did was jack James Franklin for his chopper. At number 4, it's going to be Notre Dame, because apparently we're going to award the Golden Domers for beating journalism schools now. But they are undefeated. They do have signature wins, including one impressive win against Stanford, another impressive win against Virginia Tech, and this Northwestern team had beaten a pretty good Wisconsin team, as well as beat a pretty good Purdue team. Yes, a number 4 ranking for them. At number 5, we got Georgia, who beat the better Stoops brother. Talking about Mike, not Bob. Don't get it twisted. And while Georgia's defense continues to be its defense, DeAndre Swift and Evander Holyfield Jr., those guys can run the ball. It's a lot like Sonny Michel and Nick Chubb last year. I got a lot of respect for Georgia in that Kentucky win, specifically for how well they ran the football. At number 6, I got Oklahoma, who escaped Lubbock, which is a team with a winning record, but also a program that should have 7-5 written on its tombstone. At number 7, I got West Virginia making the leap. They also beat up a team that got a lot of respect from the College Football Playoff Committee in Texas. Now, I'm going to get to Texas in more depth in that game between West Virginia and Texas in more depth later. But the thing that I want you to take away for this ranking is, number 1, Will Grier is good. He's the 3rd best quarterback in all of college football. And West Virginia beat Texas without a starting tackle, because we'll get into that later, but Big 12 officiating sucks. Also, bonus points for cooking Bevo for dinner in Austin. That has to go into your thinking. At number 8, I got Washington State, who eked out a win against Cal. This is also a Cal team that whooped up on Washington, so I give them a lot of credit for that too. At number 9, this is where I got a 2-loss LSU team. I know a lot of folks are talking about, yo, those losses are to Florida and the best team in college football. To which I say, yeah, but your offense didn't show anything against Alabama, and while the defense is good, Oklahoma would score. Clemson would score. I think Michigan would score too, and I also really think that if you put them in a game with Washington State, they're not going to get blanked. That's my point here, is that we got to see that there really isn't much to the offensive side of LSU, and that 2 through 5 in the SEC is actually really, really beatable and not really that great. And I understand a lot of people give the SEC a lot of respect because they think that it's a very good league when really it's just one team. Because if you put Clemson in that conference, yeah, Clemson shoots to number 2 real quick. You put Oklahoma in that conference, I think Oklahoma shoots to number 2 or 3 real quick. What I'm saying is that LSU team showed me what they were about, and what they're about is we're kind of great on defense, and we kind of are middling to sorry on offense. We've been sandbagging you. At number 10, I got Mark Stoops' Kentucky. It's a 2-loss team, but I also think this is the kind of team that could still mop the floor with UCF, which is a team that gave up nearly 700 yards of offense to Temple last week. And I'll ask you, who is Temple to anybody else in this discussion? Now, I'm going to leave the next 15 spots to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee to make up because I'm here to talk about who's going to win a national championship, not who's going to get ranked. But since I do care about these rankings, and I know that the SEC folks, particularly Peter Burns, is going to go on about how many SEC teams are ranked, particularly wherever the last SEC team is ranked, Texas A&M needs to get kicked out of this ranking. Texas needs to get kicked out of this ranking. Penn State needs to be kicked out of this ranking. Virginia needs to be kicked out of these rankings. Also, the mere fact that nobody wants to give Army any credit for being good this year is boggling to me. And I'll tell you what's probably going to happen. They're going to rank Auburn based off of that A&M win, and I'm going to pull my hair out just like the rest of you. Now, before we get into my rant on Texas and Tom Herman, a brief recruiting update. You should know that Oklahoma is the number team in the 2019 team rankings with just 19 commits, 2 of which are 5 stars. Spencer Rattler at quarterback, Theo Weiss at wide receiver. I think Trajan Bridges is going to get his 5th star before it's all said and done, but there's also an argument to be made for a guy like RJ Henderson. But here's the thing. Only UGA and Florida State have fewer commits than Oklahoma, who is tied with LSU at 19 for the second lowest number. So there is still room to land some big names here and get some good kids into the boat, not just in the early signing period, but also National Signing Day in February. And we'll get deeper into recruiting, especially with this big Bedlam visitors list that is compiling. If you want to know that list, go over to OUinsider.com. Myself and Brandon Drum are going to be throwing some names up there for guys that we know are going to show up. Now, as to Tom Herman and Texas. Now, you lost to Maryland. You lost to Oklahoma State. Those are 2 mediocre football teams. And then you took an L at home to West Virginia, who already got whooped by Iowa State, and you're probably going to get whooped by Iowa State, Texas. But outside of that, Texas is not just a team for which a lot of other folks look to see what the Big 12 is about. It's also got a coach for which everyone looked to see what the Big 12 is about. And while you got a guy like Lincoln Riley, who oozes integrity, who oozes respect, who is able to win the trust of folks young and old, who has us constantly in awe of his poise at the podium and how he chooses to conduct himself and how he chooses to energize his team. You also got it the opposite down there at Austin, Texas in Tom Herman. This is a guy who has mocked opposing quarterbacks by making chicken wings. This is a guy who cried foul that Will Grier taunted his team when Dana Holgerson had the cojones to go for 2 to win the game late in Austin, Texas. This is a guy who went after Mike Gundy in the post-game celebration in Stillwater, for which Tom Herman got beat. He's a sore loser. He will go out of his way to cry foul and to tell everybody how bad other teams are. We also know that he is not fit from an integrity standpoint to be the coach of the University of Texas, because it's one thing to kiss your players, and I get that because I'm one of the folks that actually like that move, because I believe that a head coach has a duty to his players to be fatherly, if not brotherly, whenever possible, because those kids are in your care. Those parents are trusting you. And what does it say about a father figure who is a sore loser, who chooses not to call Will Grier a gamer and to give respect where it's due to West Virginia, but chooses to make the game and the celebration about him in a game where West Virginia had players that were kicked out of the game and penalized for doing this? What is this, you might ask? It's 2 fingers pointed at the ground, really. but we call it a horns down sign. It is for those of us that don't engage in liking the University of Texas from a sports standpoint. I actually have quite a bit of respect for the University of Texas as an academic epicenter for all things cool. The Harry Ransom Center is awesome. The concerts, the campus, all the work that Joe Jamel has done and what he's donated to the University of Texas has made it not just a flagship for the state, but for the country. And yet and still, I can say I don't root for Texas. I don't really like Texas because I ride for OU, because that's where I got my master's degree and that's where I live. But it is something else entirely for my gesture of horns down, or for a kid's gesture of horns down, to be construed as a negative act worth penalizing in a game played by teenagers. That's what college football is. It is 18 to 23-year-olds having a ball. And how dare the Big 12 officiating crews rob these kids of an opportunity to express themselves and to celebrate by putting two fingers down to show I'm not down with Texas. But to that point, why did the horns down sign appear? Turns out in the 50s, University of Texas wanted to give its crowd something to do in the Cotton Bowl against TCU. They knew the Gig'em had their thumbs up, and they decided that the index finger and the pinky could be theirs because it looked like Longhorns. Some of us believe it looks like a rock sign. Some of us believe it looks like Hang 10. It's a sign that is not just used by the University of Texas, but by the South Florida Bulls, by the North Dakota State Bison. I could go on here. But as soon as we flip it upside down to show that we are not down with the University of Texas, all of a sudden it's a bad thing? Well, in that case, why isn't the horns down a bad thing? Because that's expressing what you ride for, and that's expressing that you only ride for the University of Texas. And if we're going to call it both ways, then do that. But I would prefer that we didn't. I would prefer that you let the kids be kids on a football field. And I would also prefer that the coach at the University of Texas be a coach with class, with integrity, and with an ability to tip his cap when he's beaten. Perhaps he'll get an opportunity to do this over again when they play Iowa State, for which I think Iowa State is going to whip Texas. A fourth loss is coming there, but it does not have to come at the expense of the University of Texas's integrity as an institution and a football program. Tom Herman, do better, or don't, and go coach in a league where nobody cares. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.